Hey everyone, it's Christy here with Grumpy Fox Garage. Welcome back to my channel. Today I want to show you some footage from me wrapping my 69 Chevelle. So in fall of last year, my husband Dusty came to me and he's like, I think we should wrap this Chevelle. So this was after a couple years before when I had said that I was like, hey, I think if we don't want to fix the paint or pay to fix the paint or wait for the paint to get fixed, all the things, like maybe we should vinyl wrap the Chevelle. And I had a color in mind and everything, like I had a direction that I wanted to go. But my husband at the time, he was kind of like, I don't think so. So I was like, whatever, it's fine. It's like not important. I actually really love the blue. Like, it's not a big deal at all. But last fall or into summer or whatever, he came to me and he's like, I think that we should wrap the Chevelle gray. And I was like, really? Like a little bit surprised, but like, okay, like maybe I can get on board with this. So we ordered some samples from Amazon because you can buy like 1 foot sections, so you can get like a really good kind of idea of what it looks like in different lighting and stuff like that. And I think I bought 6 or 8 of them, and we kind of compared them all side by side, and we ended up picking Nardo Gray from Vivid Vinyl. And I'm really happy with the results that we have. So here you can kind of see me doing a little bit of the prep work for it. So pretty much I give it what I call a sponge bath. And I just had a bucket of soapy water. I put some towels on the ground so the shop floor wasn't completely soaked, but I just wiped it or scrubbed it down with soapy water, then rinsed it with clean water, and then we did a little clay bar and clay mitt alternating action. I bought both just to kind of see what I would like better, and I just discovered that the clay mitt overall worked pretty good for most areas, considering that my paint wasn't too contaminated or anything. But the clay bar was good for like under the rockers and kind of in that door jamb and door hinge area you see there where it was pretty grubby. So did all that. You spray because you don't want any like ceramic coating underneath the vinyl or anything like that to keep it from adhering well. You just use soapy water with the clay bar. So did all that. That was pretty easy. I was actually more scared of that than anything else. I don't know why, because the rest of it was hard, to say the least. So we did door jams and everything. I did not want the blue to peek out when you opened my door. So on the actual doors, we just decided to paint that inside part black. And I actually like the way that turned out. It gives a little contrast. And it was obviously a lot easier than applying vinyl on the edges of my door like that. My skill set just isn't there yet. So that was like one thing I was battling. I probably have 50 to 60 hours total in wrapping my car, and that is after quite a few mess ups and almost starting and stopping quite a bit, which wasn't intentional or on purpose, but just like with any project, you get behind and you end up working on several things at once. So originally I had hoped that we get everything else in my car done, maybe do some testing, and then I could take my car and have it in the garage for a week or two to do the vinyl wrap, where it's just a little less dusty because the doors don't get opened up there as much. There's not a bunch of machinery running or welding going on or any of that kind of stuff. Just generally a little bit better as far as contamination goes. I did not get my wish for that, and that's okay. I definitely learned some lessons, and I learned some workarounds to working in a more dusty environment. So I think that was actually probably a good learning curve for me to have to deal with. So you can see even at this point, like my door bars aren't welded in, my dash pad is still off. There's no seats or anything. Obviously, all of my interior panels are still pulled out, all that kind of stuff, which actually ended up working out pretty well. I redid the headliner in my car as well. I don't have a great video on that. That was hard and also very rewarding because it looks really good now. At first I hated it, but after it relaxed and sat in there for a while, it looks great, and I'm really glad I finally redid that. Because, like all headliners and cars like that are original, which it was the factory one, they're just kind of gross. Like you can't even imagine the amount of mouse poop and all the things I vacuumed up out of there. Anyway, so you can see this is just a lot of prep that I'm doing here in this portion of the video. And now we'll kind of move on to getting the vinyl measured and mocked up. So I cleaned my vinyl top there to get it free of dust because everything was covered in dust, I felt like, at one point. Make sure the heater's turned off in your shop because it will blow around a bunch of really bad contamination, which I learned on the other quarter panel I did before this. So made sure that was off. Made sure to get the shop warm enough, but yeah, lesson learned there. I'll redo that panel eventually. So you can see here, I'm using a wheel dolly to manhandle the roll of vinyl. It wasn't like super heavy, but it was almost as tall as I am. And awkward. So it was just a little bit hard for me to handle. So what I did is I used that and then I would just kind of mock up my vinyl, use the magnets, whatever. And then I would very carefully cut it, kind of using the printing on the back as my quote unquote straight line to get that cut straight. I don't like things when they get all janky and cut jagged. So a little bit of a perfectionist in that sense, but that wheel dolly was a lifesaver for me because my husband wasn't always there to help me. And then I also kept the bottom of the roll from getting contaminated. I don't have any of those fancy pull down rollers or anything like that because this was the first time I ever did this. So I didn't have or buy a lot of like the tools you kind of see online or anything. This was just a DIY home job. So on this side, this side was a little easier than the first side I did, but you can see I'm kind of like contemplating here, like working it all out, seeing where I want to start, all that kind of stuff. So this has like a protective layer you can see too, because it's got kind of a weird sheen under the lighting there. That makes it really hard to kind of manipulate and get started and get kind of mocked up. But once you kind of peel it off, the vinyl becomes much more malleable, etc. Magnets, great. You need a lot of them. I thought too many, but I ended up using it 2/3 to 3/4 of them each time I was like mocking stuff up. So I was actually really glad I bought that much, especially since I was doing like such a long run. So here I'm just kind of straightening this out. Sorry, you can't see the back of the back of the video where I'm kind of working at the back of the car. I kind of focused this video more on the door jamb and stuff like that where I was going to be doing most of, but here I'm going to cut that top part off the vinyl, again following along the line of the printing to kind of keep it nice and straight. That way that those pieces were a little bit easier to use or like repurpose in other areas, which I did do with some stuff. Like some of these longer pieces were great for doing the door jambs and parts like that. I think one of them even helps me do like around the trunk and stuff like that. So, definitely, like I feel like some of the vinyl videos are so wasteful, like in the amount of vinyl that they waste, or cut out of places. And I don't know, I haven't talked to anybody in that industry to see how they kind of quote unquote upcycle that or like use that later, but maybe they just consider it waste. But I was trying to avoid that where I could. So here I'm kind of just getting ready, like trying to decide what I do. And ultimately I decide that I'm going to start on the door jamb and then do the quarter panel and the rocker after that. So, door jambs are hard. I really struggle to find a lot of information or great videos online on how to do them. And unfortunately I added to that kind of like not so great, like there's not a lot of information out of there. It's a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of using heat to shrink and stretch and things like that. And it still isn't perfect. You can see at the back of my door there that it's a really sharp square corner on both sides. I never really quite figured out how to get that inlaid in there correctly. And it's definitely going to peel up. I think on one side it already is peeling up. And that's fine. I'm willing to take the L on that. A, I'm an amateur. B, this was the first time I've ever done a vinyl wrap on anything. And C, I don't know that they're really meant for classic cars, I'm not gonna lie. Like, it turned out great in a lot of places, but there's a lot of places that I'm like, man, this was, like, way harder than I think it should have been. And I think that's just because there's not a ton of flat panels on it. It really took me a lot to manipulate and figure out, okay, you're supposed to start on one of the, ways is to start on the highest part of the panel and stuff like that. Well, that's kind of hard when the highest part of the panel and then it also like curves in the opposite direction. You're just like, well, okay, so you have to really like learn how to lay it down and start it in the right places and then pulling the backing off in the right time and sometimes leaving that protective cover on the top for to stiffen it up to like keep it in place better or help you go over a flat panel. It's really, I don't have the verbiage probably to explain it very well, but I mean, there is a lot of learning curves. Every single panel on the car is entirely different, and the technique varies from panel to panel. Now, someone who does this every day for the job probably would tell me, well, that's not actually really true. It's all these same basic principles, but I'm just going based off of the random YouTube videos I found. Not so random. I found a couple people that were really good and their videos were very helpful, but still I'm just like it was hard. So, definitely recommend buying one of the big infrared heaters. That helped a lot. But also you do need a heat gun because you need it for smaller areas. The vinyl squeegees, the ones that have like the felt on the ends or on the edges, excuse me, those became some of my favorites. I bought one pair of the vinyl gloves that are supposed to help you like glide over the surface really well. They kind of work for a little bit, but I don't know. I wasn't like super impressed with the ones I bought, so I'll have to try a few more pairs. That wasn't really in the budget for this project. You can only buy so many tools to try, when you're doing a project like this, even though you're DIYing. I know you're saving a ton of money by not paying someone else to do it, but I think the biggest thing I was shocked by was how much time it was actually taking me. I think I probably spent 12 hours on each door jam. And on the driver's side, part of that was probably restarting that at least once. I don't know if I did twice on that side, but after that, uh, the second hardest thing, or well, second hardest, the other hardest thing were the hood, which I learned a lot of lessons with that, and I'm gonna have to redo that. I didn't realize or had forgotten actually that you couldn't vinyl wrap over primer, and I did that. And so far it's staying on, but definitely gonna have to redo that eventually. The trunk lid was really hard. It's pretty flat, but it's got like a raised spot that goes down the center of it, towards where it bends to, back by the taillights and stuff like that. That ended up being really tricky. I need to redo a little bit around the trunk on the inset there of that jam and everything. That was also a little bit harder. We took all the trim off and everything for the vinyl top, so everything is seamed under the trim there, so that was kind of nice. Just cut that along the edge of the vinyl top, and then all the trim and stainless pieces fit really nice. And let's see what else. Yeah, it just ended up being very time consuming. Don't recommend doing door jams as a first timer, but I didn't know any better, so I did them anyways. And vanity got me because I was like, I can't just leave this blue and the rest of my car be gray. And I was really worried because I didn't really understand how to be able to tell where the blue would show through and where it wouldn't show through. So my theory was to cover it all with vinyl so that I didn't have to worry about that. We did start on the front clip because we actually had it off of my car, as you can see in the picture. And so he's like, I think maybe, you should try to wrap that so then that's done when we just put it on the car. And while that is great in theory, it is not good in practicality. The biggest thing is it's like when you're trying to stretch and place that vinyl, you really need the weight of the car and everything being securely attached to something to really make that happen. And that does not happen when the front fenders are sitting on bodywork stands. So we definitely learned that the hard way. I did one of the front fenders 3 times and the other one 2 times. So I literally cut vinyl, had it kind of placed, and then took it off. One of the things I learned was you can kind of overwork the edges on the adhesive. So that was kind of a bummer to learn. So I had finished that fender. I was like, oh, okay, I think this might be good. And then it was kind of like peeling and curling in a couple places. And then I could kind of see the next day that it just was not gonna stay the way I wanted. So peeled all that off, which that's also hard. And I can see as the longer it sticks, the harder it's gonna be to come off, all those kind of things. But all in all, I would, if you're kind of savvy with that stuff and detail oriented, I definitely recommend trying it. It was very satisfying, very gratifying, and I really like the way my car looks in pictures now because, vanity, but, it really changed the look and the attitude of my car, and I actually really like that without, without going through all the process of paint and everything like that. Although, I don't know, Dusty and I, after we watched some videos, we were like, "Eh, maybe paint would have been easier." So we'll say 7 out of 10 recommend, depending on uh your goal to try to get something done and how much gumption you have to figure this out just by watching some YouTube videos. There's not really a lot of good references on the internet. So anyway, thank you again for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next week with our next video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments if you have any questions or if there's other things you want to see as far as our videos. We have a lot of stuff and more stuff to work on, so we'll talk to you soon.